Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Licence and Gambling Acts Casework Subcommittee. I'm Councillor Jupp. I'll be chairing tonight's hearing, and if I could introduce my fellow councillors.
Hello. Councillor Mary Clarkson.
And Councillor Mark Ligo.
And the officers, please.
Richard Masters, Senior Licensing Compliance Officer.
John Ali, Licensing Compliance Officer.
Aswa Khan, Law and Governance Officer.
Alison Daly, Solicitor, and I advise the committee this evening.
Before getting to business, I'll invite anyone, any colleagues to make declarations of interest. I have none.
None. No.
None. Excellent. In which case, let's get to the present application. Just for the sake of formality, the subcommittee has read the papers, so you don't need to repeat any points at length. The hearing will take a discussion, take the form of a discussion led by me, the chair. You'll be asked to make your statement, and members of the subcommittee and the licensing authority might ask you questions to clarify evidence. You'll be given about 20 minutes to present your case, and then you'll have an opportunity to sum up in brief. Richard, could I ask you to present the licensing authority's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This licensing subcommittee hearing is convened to determine an application submitted by Jam Restaurants Limited to vary the premises licence in respect to McDonald's, 44 to 46 Cormarket Street in Oxford. The applicant seeks to vary the licence to extend the hours for late night refreshment. The hours sought are 2300 hours to 0300 hours daily. The current hours for late night refreshment are 2300 hours to midnight daily. A copy of the application and the steps the applicant intends to take to promote the licensing objectives can be found at Appendix 1. In order to assist all parties to the hearing, the existing premises licence for McDonald's can be found at Appendix 2. The application has attracted representations from 3 interested parties or other persons, which can be found at Appendix 3. The representations highlight concerns in relation to how the application may fail to promote the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance and public safety. The subcommittee is reminded that when considering any representations, only those issues related to the 4 licensing objectives should be considered and appropriate weight given to the importance and relevance of each representation. Comments made regarding the potential impact on the trade of other businesses cannot be considered. The subcommittee is reminded of its responsibilities under the Crime and Disorder Act and the Human Rights Act when considering the fair balance between the interests of the applicant and the rights of local residents. Any decision taken by the subcommittee must be necessary and proportionate to the objectives being pursued. Members are reminded that whenever they make a decision under the Licensing Act, they have a duty to act with a view of promoting the licensing objectives. In making its decision, the subcommittee must also have regard to the Home Office statutory guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and the Council's own Statement of Licensing Policy. Detail of these can be found within the body of the report. Members should note that the applicant or persons making representations have the right of appeal against the decision made by the subcommittee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, do you have any questions for the licensing authority? No. Seeing none. Legal, no questions. Applicant, do you have any?
No questions, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. In which case, I'll invite you to present your case. I do apologise, I forgot to ask for your names earlier on, so please do introduce yourselves as well.
So yes, good evening. My name is Leo Cheryl-Lambides and I'm the barrister representing McDonald's. Next to me, I have Joanne Jones, who is the director of Jam Restaurants Limited, and she's essentially the franchisee that hopes to operate this late night refreshment. I will say that you have an existing licence here and you have conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule. What tends to happen is that McDonald's centrally tends to apply for a premises licence, which is what happened back in February, because you'd had an existing store and it had moved to a new location. And so the operating schedule which you have in your application was at that time filtered through, particularly your police responsible authority. and this is what was agreed. So in a sense, I would ask you to sort of look at that because it reflects what has been previously discussed and advised on. The only thing I would point out in that is condition 4, which is rendered somewhat otiose because if you choose to grant this application, there will be a hard close at 3 o'clock. And so what that would mean is that typically the last walk-in that would be allowed into the store would be about 2:45, and the last delivery order that would be accepted would be at about 2:50, at which time the third party operator app would be switched off, so you couldn't be at home and order a McDonald's. So as your licensing officer confirmed, this is a legal regime and it's governed essentially by the 4 licensing objectives, and we must remain relevant. And I'm very grateful for the indication that the commercial interests and so on are not relevant. What is particularly relevant is that you and your colleagues are advised by the responsible authorities, which we're bereft of this evening. Paragraph 9.12 of the Section 182 guidance says that when the police talk about crime and disorder, you ought to listen to them and not lightly, according to the case of Thwaites, go against them, but also you're to scrutinise what they have to say. And it is interesting that they are not here. The application has been scrutinised by your responsible authorities and they've not found any concerns. So if there were issues around crime and disorder, if there were issues around noise, nuisance and disturbance and so on, you would have expected even overburdened, overworked officers of the council and the police to be here, as they were on the last occasion when we were asking for something far more modest. You do have the benefit of knowing that this application has gone through planning, and I appreciate that planning and licensing are separate regimes, albeit they run parallel with each other. They do crossover, and the Section 182 guidance does encourage both planning and licensing to get together and make sure that they consistently look at conditions so that they're essentially singing to the same hymn sheet. I know joined up thinking is a myth in local government, but it is possible that we might get somewhere close to that this evening. So originally, the City Council didn't want to grant the planning permission and it went to appeal. And on appeal, the inspector essentially found that the concern was noise, nuisance and likely disturbance. And the inspector said, well, the council have no evidence of that. Similarly, in licensing today, you have no expert evidence to tell you that noise and nuisance and disturbance is going to be the same or any worse. And in fact, the inspector found that as a matter of amenity, there'd be no discernible difference. So in effect, you do have planning expertise who are a responsible authority that are saying to you, as a matter of impact, there will be no discernible interest or impact. So that is some benefit as well as the silence. Now, in addition to that, you have the operating schedule, which is at pages 68 onwards. And these are the steps that McDonald's proposed to take in order to promote the licensing objectives. And so you'll see there, we have engagement, CCTV, security measures, risk assessment, Staff Safe. I'll briefly explain what Staff Safe is. Staff Safe is an audio-visual system which is operated outside of Scotland, isn't it? Yep. And so what happens is if you are being badly behaved in a store, some sort of Scottish voice comes up over the tannoy. I don't know if it's a Scottish voice because I've never heard it actually, but I always imagine it's a Scottish voice, which I'm probably going to get into trouble for. Oh, that's useful. And it says, you in the green jumper, pay attention. And suddenly when you're in the store with your friends and you're being told to behave by someone from Glasgow, I don't know if they're based in Glasgow either, but it draws people's attention and it's a really effective mechanism. Other tools that we have, which are quite subtle, include changing the music. It's a really sad fact that if you play classical music, it tends to clear people out. If you switch off the internet, if you switch off the internet chargers, and effectively all our staff are trained in conflict management, in reading a situation, and they're able to undertake these very subtle changes, which you don't see reflected in the conditions, but in effect are reflected in the way that we operate. So Ms Jones has had about 15 restaurants for over 15 years as a franchisee, never been the subject of enforcement, reviews or so on, because we have these mechanisms in place to control how we react in our particular locality. So you have training and so on. Just to give you an example of a great reduction in conflict has been the introductions of touch screens and being able to order through your phone. It's a rather sad fact that if we no longer talk to each other and we just talk through a screen, it means we're not interacting at the counter and having fights. So that's having a lesser impact. And you can see there that we work in partnership. We promote litter picks, we undertake litter picks. We have policies regarding children. So our child safety and safeguarding policies, for example, have been approved by Dr. Bernardo's and the NSPCC. They're always kept updated. We work with safeguarding and providing safe havens. So in the nighttime economy, for example, because we're well lit, we're covered by CCTV, being able to have that respite and come into one of our stores is important. We have an impact in terms of accessibility. Anyone can come into one of our stores and use our disabled access toilets. And so what that means is if you have a nighttime economy that's congested, people with mobility issues are often unable to enter into the nighttime economy. But knowing that there are late night refreshment venues available that they can use has a massive impact. And I don't know if you have these accessibility schemes in your local authority area, but they are available and we do contribute to them. So broadly speaking, our operating schedule is tried and tested. It's been briefly tried and tested up until midnight. We've also operated a number of temporary event notices without any objections or any issues. I suspect that's probably enough of an introduction from me, and you might have questions which I can answer. So if there are any specific areas you'd like me to focus on, I'm happy to do that, either myself or through Ms Jones. But I do commend the application to you, because essentially you find yourself with an application that doesn't have any significant objections or criticism to the way we propose to operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harlambides. Colleagues, are there any questions you'd like to ask of the applicant? I'll kick off with one then. Could you give us a little more detail about how your litter pick system works in practice, how often you carry the litter picks out, and how effective they are at managing waste outside your shop?
So absolutely, as you are no doubt all aware, the conduct of people away from any given premises, whether it's late night refreshments or alcohol, can't be the responsibility of the licensee. Nonetheless, McDonald's themselves are just as agitated by litter as civil society is. So since the 80s, we've worked with the Department of the Environment promoting things like bins and so on. You don't see that many bins anymore because of terrorism issues and planning issues and so on. But what we do is litter picks. So each store has a regular litter picker. The rule of thumb is that we start at sunrise and finish at about sunset. That's to do with health and safety, risk assessment and insurance issues, because we don't want to send people out into the nighttime economy often alone. In extreme cases of need, that can happen, but it does have to go through a risk assessment and also through the insurers before that can get approval. So I can't offer that as a condition. But what we tend to do is we tend to open up, and we'll start with a litter pick, and we pick all litter, not just McDonald's litter. And that's always the case across the entire estate and all franchisees. There will then, when there's a lull in the day, be a further little pick just before lunch and then after lunch. Tea time, so just after the school rush, and then perhaps early dinner. And then as it gets darker, we tend to focus on the immediate vicinity of the store. So that's how the litter picks work. We also do sponsor bins where we can, though we tend to need planning and highways approval, and we'll soon have to need sort of terrorism and safety approval. So the desire is there, but the reality is that we're seeing less and less bins. The other thing we do is we do something called Love Where You Live. So we work with local community groups, local schools, and we organise litter picks. For example, if there's local parks or local areas.
I'm loath to interrupt you, but could you keep as much of what you're saying as specific to the location in question, i.e. the Cornmarket Street location as possible?
So the Cornmarket Street, what we'll tend to do is we'll effectively go up and down. That's what will happen during these 4 or 5 times a day. There'll be a litter pick, and if there are hotspots of litter anywhere else, we will go into those areas and we'll just keep it under a risk assessment. You can either impose a condition on that, but whether you do or not, we have litter picks and we'll do so 7 days a week.
Under the present regime, sorry, yes. Under the present regime, could I ask, in the late evenings, say 2 to 3 hours before midnight, what frequency of litter picking tends to happen, and or does it tend to happen with any particular frequency in that specific location?
It will reduce the later it gets. And it will reduce in scope to the immediate vicinity, subject to a risk assessment. So it's more likely that the morning after the night before will be our first litter pick, and we will traverse the Cornmarket area. But as it gets to 8, 9, 10, as the nighttime economy kicks in, it's generally not assessed safe to have people out in the streets at night.
I'll give you a concrete example. I've taken the map from the back of the bundle, and I've marked a cross on the location of a bench that's right outside the premises, visible from the premises. I'm wary of anecdata, so to speak, but every single time I've walked past in the evening, in the late evening, that bench has been crowded with McDonald's waste, and it's in full sight of the store. It's really visible by the staff. It's not as though it's further away. And the question from my end is, do you regard it as a responsibility of the license holder to make sure that that's kept clear, or not?
So generally, yes, we're really concerned about our environment and our vicinity. Subject to a health and safety risk assessment, we will have someone more regular. And I think your anecdotal points are very valid because your local councillors with local knowledge. So it's not anecdote, it's probably quite good evidence. The latest we can go and have someone outside at this store is about 8, 9 o'clock, yes? So that's as late as we would go. And then we wouldn't have someone outside until the following morning. We can explore later, but it needs to go through risk assessment and insurance before we can put someone outside.
So what you're saying effectively is that if this committee were to approve the new late night refreshment hours, after about 9 o'clock, no matter how much waste ended up in the immediate vicinity of the premises, prima facie, you wouldn't be able to do anything about it without jumping through a series of quite complicated hoops.
If it was in the immediate vicinity and it was deemed safe and subject to risk assessment, so for example, this premises, because it's near to a nightclub, will have SIA registered door supervisors Thursday, Friday and Saturday. So that means there is a sort of certain safety or a safer envelope. Then it may well be that if there are lulls, you can see that someone can leave the store and approach that bench. I didn't see that bench tonight, so I'm really sorry. I wish I'd taken better note when I was walking around. But then they would, but it would be kept under risk assessment. And we want to be in a clean environment and we want to be in a neighbourly environment. So even though there are hoops to jump, we are keen to jump them where it's feasible to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson.
Presumably there are other McDonald's sites where you have permission to stay open until 3 in the morning, is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
And based on that, I just wondered what level of trade you get between midnight and 3 in the morning. I know that every place is different, but just an idea of the peaks and the volume of trade at different times of the day, particularly in the early hours.
It is very different. So as a broad generalisation, and I represent McDonald's up and down the country, we will peak at about 2:30, and
in the morning, no.
yes, And then we'll continue steadily until from 3 until around 5. There are wider advantages beyond the business case for keeping premises open. So one of them is staff safety. The other one is our environmental impact. It's easier to operate through the night rather than open and close, so we have less of an impact. And staff prefer to start at 11 and finish at 6 rather than finish at 2 or 3. So people's work patterns are that much more favourable. But the business case varies quite wildly from store to store, and I don't yet really know what pattern you will have here. No.
So you're saying that you're asking for operating hours until 3 in the morning, but you would have staff on the premises till 5 or 6? Okay, thank you.
Yes, I think it normally takes between 30 to 45 minutes to have a clean up because the store will need to close down. And then in terms of setting up, so this store doesn't open at 5, it opens at 6. So staff would be on from about 5:15 onwards. So things like taking out trash, doing the litter pick, and setting up the store would all be done in that period beforehand, before we can open to the public.
Any further questions? No. Oh, well, I'll continue in a minute, Richard. Actually, I've just got one more of my own. I was grateful. Thank you very much for drawing attention to the relevant policy in our statement of licensing policy, which gives specific times at which licensable activities must cease before the premises are closed. What you said wasn't entirely in keeping with those. You gave the 2:15 example as the last time at which someone would be admitted to the store. 2:45, beg your pardon. Well, regardless, policy LH5 states that the last admission should take place an hour before cessation of the licensable activity, and policy LH7 states that, sorry, that was policy LH7. Policy LH5 states that the licensable activity should cease 30 minutes before the premises close. But that's just drawing that to your attention. And if there's any particular reaction you have, or you know, if you would like to make an appeal to us to exercise discretion for some reason, then I, you know, will be willing to hear that, of course. But those are the policies.
Those policies tend to be rooted in sort of quite traditional aspects of drinking up time, and they tend to be related to alcohol-led premises. We're not an alcohol-led premise. You're not even allowed to bring alcohol onto the store, and you're checked for that. As a late night refreshment premises, if you're applying for late night refreshments and then told you've got to stop the licensable activity an hour beforehand, and then half an hour beforehand, it makes a nonsense of the licensable activities. So there are huge advantages in being open late within a nighttime economy. So there can be both advantages and disadvantages. But just to give you an example, if you leave a noisy nightclub and you're sort of full of the spirit of drink and music, you tend to be quite loud. Your voice tends to be elevated. If you go into a restaurant which is calmer, by the time you leave, studies have shown that your voices have dropped down. If you're in a kind of stressful nighttime economy environment and you're feeling anxious about being out at night in the street and so on, being able to go into a store which is well lit, covered by CCTV, and isn't drink-led, provides you with a respite. So in many local authority areas where the police operate safe haven venues, we at McDonald's tend to volunteer to participate in that. So those are two very good reasons why in a nighttime economy, albeit late, having late night venues such as this has a huge advantage. So in terms of amenity impact in any event, having gone through the planning process, we know that evidentially speaking, there are no adverse amenity considerations, i.e. crime and disorder or public nuisance, that are going to arise from operating late. So your policy is actually seeking to ameliorate against those. And we know evidentially that that's not going to be the case, apart from litter on the bench.
Thank you. Richard. Sorry.
Just one question. I'm picking up concerns of one of the people who objected, and that's about vehicle movement. And I just wondered what level of business do you associate with the takeaway trade, sort of between midnight and 3?
So yes, there is as with just modern living now, third-party delivery drivers are a feature. In fact, one of the reasons for building this store is to build a separate entrance for delivery drivers. So within your nighttime economy, this is one of the few premises that has actually been designed to limit and ameliorate that impact. So they have to come in through a different entrance. They have to take their helmet off. They're able to use toilets. They're able to eat in the store. These are really big issues around delivery drivers, where they eat, where they go to the toilet and so on. So they are registered with our third-party operators. We have agreements with our third-party operators because, of course, we don't employ them, but we have a system whereby we have checks, we have policies in place. We are able to blacklist particular drivers if we have complaints, if we have concerns, or maybe members of the public have concerns. At this store, because of our SIA presence during busier times, we actually see people, and in smaller towns and cities, we get to know the drivers themselves because it tends to be a regular cohort. So we are able to effectively manage them, again, insofar as we can control third parties, whether it's someone eating on the bench and leaving their litter, or a driver. There is a limit to what we can do, but insofar as what we think we can do, we think we're as far ahead as possible. And obviously, like everyone else around the country, we're thinking about licensing schemes, registration schemes, and how third-party operators might develop in the future.
Just on that, what sort of behaviour would cause you to blacklist a delivery driver?
Prejudicial behaviour, violence, illegal activity, abuse to staff or customers, abuse to any police or operators, those types of behaviours.
And has such blacklisting occurred at the Oxford location?
Don't think so.
No.
At any of your stores?
No.
No, nothing here.
Thank you. Richard?
Just tagging on to that one in regards to the delivery drivers. Obviously, because it's pedestrianised Cornmarket Street, where would the motorbikes be parked when they get the deliveries? Actually, maybe further down Carfax, maybe?
On either side, but they're mainly push bikes.
Yep. So you've heard that they're mainly push bikes that are used in this area. It is either side of Cornmarket, so they're supposed to park lawfully in areas where they're required to park. I know that probably doesn't happen, but again, we can't control that. I know many local authorities are working to create bike bays. I don't know how far you are, if at all, here in Oxford around that. I'm guessing no, but yeah, they are supposed to be parking responsibly and safely. One thing we can do is geofence particular areas. So if you've got a concentration of drivers in particular areas, we can, well, not we, but the operator, Uber, for example, can stop the app operating in an area, so it stops them congregating. So that would be an example where you would come to us and say, look, we're really worried about people being in a particular area. We would then get in touch with Uber and hopefully cooperate. If they don't cooperate with us, you can escalate it directly with the police, for example, and they often do joint visits directly with Uber, and that's a relationship that the third-party operators have with the police and local regulation.
Richard, do you mind if I just ask a few more questions about that specifically?
Yeah,
I mean, surely you don't really believe that they're mainly push bikes being used. I'll accept that the vehicles being used tend to look like bikes, but they're very much self-propelled, and really, from our point of view, the layout of Cornmarket Street being as it is, having that number of what are effectively, unfortunately, illegal mopeds in the vicinity of the location with so many pedestrians, some of them inebriated, walking around, that does pose a hazard. So that was a remark. My question relates to the geofencing. What's the process that you have to undertake in order to get your Deliveroo's and Uber Eats's to geofence a particular location so that the riders don't bring their bikes into the pedestrianised area?
There's a liaison with all the contractees. So the franchisees will have a contact, and then there is at McDonald's central office a dedicated licensing officer that deals with them. So we're able to escalate concerns very quickly. Just to give you an example, I've been working for McDonald's now for more years than I care to think of. We've never had a single review that's come directly as a result of that. So issues can get escalated very, very, very quickly. What I'll say about push bikes, electric bikes and mopeds is that one of the concerns is often that it's idling and so on. But what we found, and we've studied this, is idling, running your engine costs money and fuel. So given that the margins for people are actually very low, the reality is that the vast majority of operators and drivers are actually quite sensible. And as always, it tends to be a few really sort of bad examples that drag the rest down. So it's in your interest, if you're a delivery driver, to be not idling, not running your engine, not joyriding, being safe, because at our store you will get noticed because we have security at the door at this particular store. And you're right that the outside area can be dangerous, and we don't want to be associated with any level of danger. So it's in our interests to work with our drivers to ensure that they behave in a sensible way. So one of the things that happens when you get an order that comes through is you're giving instructions that are unique to the local store. So for example, we would say, no helmet, you can use our toilet, you can eat here. If it is to switch your engines off or not to motor down the pedestrianised way, we add that informative to them so that information is flashed up. So over time, new drivers become trained and know what the etiquette is in a given area.
Thank you. Maybe Ms. Jones would be better suited to answer this, but Jam restaurants, in how many locations have you written to central licensing at McDonald's to request that they enter into communication with Uber Eats, Deliveroo, whoever, to geofence a particular location? Have you had experience doing that, and what's the outcome been?
No. And generally I have relationship managers with each of the 3POs, so Uber, Just Eat and Deliveroo. If there's any trouble or anything that we need to talk about, then I just give them a call and we work together. But there's never been anything that I've had to do, no.
Okay, thank you.
Statement first. I mean, just follow on what you were saying, Chair. We've got a real issue with mopeds, scooters, illegal bikes. And I'm hoping that, you know, whatever the outcome today, and if license does get granted, that you'd certainly be sending an email, a letter to all the new proposed delivery drivers, Uber Eats, because we've got a real issue in the Oxford town centre, which is a very busy footfall pedestrians, and in generally, because the quicker you get your delivery, quicker you get out, the more money you make, and that's what it is. That, you know, but what's happening is that inconsiderate driving, even at slow speeds, but it is in the manoeuvring, and obviously with the entrances where they are either side of Core Market as well. And the next request I was going to ask as well, I was just looking that there's a lot of initiatives you do helping up clean up communities, and you say you do a litter pick. Have you ever been involved in any community litter picks yourselves, and would you be interested in doing one in Oxford as well? We have many litter pickets in Oxford. We have with the Civic Society, and Mary and I know with Good Gym Oxford, and there's lots of good initiatives as well. This particular part of town is where we're seeing a lot of rubbish. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I've never seen anybody with a fluorescent jacket and say McDonald's litter pickers, never seen them, and I'm sure you do have them, but I don't know how they operate or when they do, and I hope you get involved in community initiatives.
I operate in a number of different towns and support lots of schools, lots of footballs. So we take all the football teams out and we do litter picks. We generally do it in March and then through September as well. So you'll see me on the front manning it up, no problem at all. We all get involved, all the management team the whole way down, and include the schools as well, and do talks on litter and keeping the local area clean and tidy.
And this is the point that I was saying, if there are specific areas, even if they're away from the store, so there's a concern around, I know, a local park, as the case may be, if we're approached, we will engage with that, and we do engage with that. You won't see fluorescent jackets because we tend not to want to draw attention to people. So that's why you often don't see litter picks. Also, in a busy town centre like this, as much as we clean, it doesn't take long for litter to be dropped, which is a scourge that we don't like as much as you don't like. And if there were an ideal solution, we would be volunteering for it.
Richard, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, just in regards to, I say about security staff, you've got the condition about the risk assessment for security, but do you currently have door staff on, what does it say, Wednesdays?
We do Thursdays,
to
Fridays and
Fridays.
Saturdays.
Yeah.
So it tends to match the operation of the neighbouring nightclub. So we keep that risk assessment. In fact, there are very few things that are not kept under risk assessed review in McDonald's, but security is one of them. So for example, if you've got a match day, if you're in an area where there's match days, you're more likely to see security during the day and so on, though it's not related to our licence of activity. But that's why you might see security at times of the day when you wouldn't expect them.
Any further questions from anyone? Legal? No? Excellent. No responsible authorities. We have no other interested parties as far as I can see. In which case, unless there are any final questions from anyone, I'll adjourn the meeting and we'll deliberate, and feel free to stay and we'll call you back in. Yeah. Oh, of course, beg your pardon. Would you like to sum up? Is there anything you'd like to say further to what
I shouldn't really. I do love the sound of my own voice, as you've all gathered. But so there's been no direct criticism of the operating schedule. This is a responsible operator that is really concerned about being responsible in its own environment. We are a magnet because everyone recognises McDonald's. So if we were to do anything wrong, people see it very, very quickly. The truth is, consult your own experience. How many times has this city council had to review a McDonald's or had any issues with them that have gone to the nth degree? So on that basis, I commend the application to you as someone that can be a responsible part of your nighttime economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, anything further from you? No. In which case I will adjourn the meeting this time, and we'll call you back in.
Thank you.
welcome back and thank you for your patience. The subcommittee's resolved to grant the licence as applied for, but makes the following comments. First of all, the licensee should endeavour to reduce the amount of litter left in the immediate vicinity of the premises. And secondly, the licensee should continue dialogue with third-party delivery operators with a view to encouraging responsible behaviour by third-party delivery drivers. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Excellent. You have the right. Oh, yeah.
Just to be absolutely clear, I think it is clear, but just to be absolutely clear, they're comments that have arisen from the deliberations that we commend to you. They're definitely not conditions of any kind.
Right. You have the right to appeal, should you wish to appeal, within 28 days of receipt of the decision notice.
21.
No, 21, beg your pardon, 21 days of receipt of the decision notice. With that, there are only a few more items for us councillors to undertake, approving the minutes of the last 2 meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes. I don't have an issue with them.
No,
No.
4.
Technically, do we need to go into confidential session? So I did.
Oh, because some of them will be, yes.
Some of them
In
are
which case,
confidential.
I'll ask you to leave, please.
So, yeah.
And we'll continue.